All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the ExploreSA info session. I hope you can hear me. If someone could just let me know if you can't hear me, that would be great. Yeah, my name is Holly. I'm with Unearthed, and I'll be kind of emceeing this info session for you today. We've also got a number of people from the South Australian government on the line as well, so they'll be able to answer a lot of your questions about the challenge. So the purpose of today's session is really for people who are thinking about participating in the challenge, for us to share with you a little bit about how it works, and to answer any of your questions, and to give you all the information that you should need about participating in the challenge. I've got a few slides to run through, but we try and keep these sessions pretty casual and pretty open. So if you have questions, pop them into the chat box at any time. There's also a Q&A function on this webinar. So at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Q&A button. If you click on that, you can put your questions in there as well. So I'll run through the slides, and then we can have a particular time for Q&A at the end, but I will stop if any questions come through as we're going as well. Another thing to bear in mind about this session, usually when we run these in person, I'll ask for a show of hands about who's a geologist, who's a data scientist, who's a student, and to get some context about all of your guys' backgrounds. But as we can't really easily do that today, the way that this kind of presentation and this discussion is designed is for a kind of broad group of people. So we understand that some people won't have any familiarity with the resources sector or with exploration. So some of the slides that we go through are kind of giving you an introduction about why we care about this stuff, the concepts around exploration as well. So it's really designed for everybody. So at any point in time, just pop in a question if there's anything that doesn't make sense. And for any of the guys from the department, I will leave you guys for now in the attendees column, but once we go into questions, I'll enable your audio and your video so you can chat to everybody. And if there's anything you want to flag while we're going through, just pop it in the chat and I can allow you to talk as well. The other option, if anyone wants to speak directly, if you see under the panel there, you'll be able to raise your hand and then I can turn your audio on. Cool, so we'll get started. I will just share my screen here. Okay. So for those of you that don't have a background in mining or mineral exploration, here's a bit of a background to why this challenge is here. So the ExploreSA, the Gawler challenge, is around identifying areas of potential economic mineralization across the Gawler Craton, which is a large area in South Australia. But why would we want to do that? Why would we care? So minerals and metals are really crucial for us, and we're seeing a changing environment in the minerals and metals that we need, particularly as we go into more renewable technologies, like with lithium batteries, with electric vehicles. We're seeing a change in the demand for metals, and particularly things like copper. A lot of the demand for copper is actually coming from electric vehicles. So we really are in a state where we need to ramp up our ability to find these crucial metals that we need. And currently we have a less than 1% success rate in finding these deposits. Now, that might sound pretty low, and you might think that geologists are doing a really bad job, but it's actually just fundamentally a really, really difficult problem. These deposits are very, very rare, and they're quite small in the grand scheme of things, so they're very difficult to find. And geologists use a wealth of different approaches to find these deposits and have had great success over the years. But as we go through time, essentially kind of the easier deposits to be found have been found, and we're now looking for new ways to find deposits to increase our success rate. So we're asking people from all over the world to come up with their ideas of how we can approach this problem differently, how you can look at it in a different way, and come up with ideas for where we might find these critical new mineral deposits. So this is just a kind of repeating what I said, but a little bit of a graphic for those of you that aren't familiar with exploration. So as I said, finding mineral deposits is hard. And so geologists have developed a really broad a collection of types of data that we collect to try and help us find these mineral deposits. So when you come to the competition and you look at the data sets available that we've provided you, you might think, oh, there's an awful amount of data sets here. And that is because we know that there's a lot of different techniques that we can use to help us vector in towards mineralization. So a lot of the data sets you'll see are what we call geophysics. So these are physical methods that allow us to measure the physical characteristics of rocks. So it might be magnetics, it might be gravity, which is an indication of density, might be electromagnetic surveys. And all of these things are designed to identify the difference in physical characteristics between the mineralized rock and the unmineralized rock. So if you think about it, copper will often have different characteristics to the rocks around it. So hopefully these tools enable us to kind of indicate where that is. We also use geochemistry, which is like physical rock samples, and test that to say what is the elemental makeup of that rock. We look for structures, we look at geological mapping, and all these kind of different things. So all of these data sets that geologists typically collect are available for you in this challenge. So, as I said, the Gawler challenge is specifically around looking at this area in South Australia called the Gawler Craton, which you can see in the middle of this map here, to find the next mineral deposit also. So can you look at this data with fresh eyes and find something that hasn't been found before? So the Gawler Craton is a very, very prospective region in the world. It has some of the largest copper deposits in the world. You've got the Olympic Dam in the middle of that map there, Prominent Hill, Carrapateena. These are all world-class deposits. So we think there's plenty of opportunity to find more things like this. And in fact, just last year or the year before, BHP found a new deposit in that kind of region, and they intercepted 425 meters at 3% copper, which is probably one of the best discovery holes that we've seen in a number of decades. So it just goes to show that by looking at data in a different way, there's still really amazing world-class deposits to be found out there in the Gawler. So we think there's plenty of opportunity for you guys to find some stuff out there. And I've probably mentioned this again, but you'll hear a lot about copper in the Gawler Craton and Prominent Hill, Olympic Dam, Carrapateena. They're all within the same class of deposits, which we call iron oxide copper gold. But the Gawler being one of these regions globally that's very prospective, there's lots of opportunity for different types of mineralization out there. So copper, gold, maybe lithium, maybe nickel. There's lots of opportunity here. So encouraging people to look for any type of economic mineralization in this region. So what data is available? I'll run through the presentation and I'll probably just flick back onto our website so we can actually run through that specifically. All of the data available for this challenge is publicly available data, which is hosted on SARAG, which is the department, the government's kind of digital online repository for all this public data. What we've done though, to make things a bit easier for you, is because there's lots of data available, we've curated this to give you some top 10 data sets, which we think are the most useful for you to get started with. So because we've got, 40 plus data sets that are relevant, we wanted to kind of give you a good starting point to say, of all these data sets that's available, and these are the ones that we think will be the most useful for you in getting started with the challenge. Also, if you are not familiar with exploration, we've also written a short blog post, which is really useful for you to read through if you want to kind of get quickly up to speed with these different types of data sets that geologists collect. So in that blog post, kind of go through the most common data sets, why they're collected and how we use them, and also some common pitfalls that you might experience if you're trying to use some of these data sets. So once we go through this presentation, I might jump back to the website to show you guys a little bit on that. So what have we actually put into those top 10 data sets? Well, that first one is going back to, remember talking before, was geophysics. So surveys that measure that physical characteristics of the rock. Now, the Department of Energy and Mines in South Australia have recently completed one of the largest ever geophysical surveys over the Gawler craton. The length of flying time was distance to the moon and back twice, so that's pretty far, collecting really high resolution geophysical data, so particularly magnetics and radiometrics. So that data set's recently been released. It's probably one of the best in the world that a survey's provided, and it covers the whole project area. So it's a great data set to get started with, and that's our #1 in the top 10 data sets for you to have a look at. Practically, that data is available in a number of different formats. So you can actually get the raw data, and you can also get the gridded data and images in a number of different formats. So you can use that in a number of different ways. We've also got some other geophysical surveys in that top 10 data set, including gravity and magnetotellurics. I would suggest, if magnetotellurics is a new concept for you, that you ask one of the guys in the survey to explain that in a little bit more detail, because it's a fairly new technique that people are using, but very useful for identifying mineral systems. We also have drilling and surface sampling, so that's pretty self-explanatory. For those of you unfamiliar with exploration, typically what happens is geologists will use these geophysical surveys as a broad exploration technique. And when you see drilling data, you might think, oh, the drilling data is really, really clustered in certain areas. So we use drilling as kind of a truth testing process. So from those geophysical surveys, we'll then follow up with drilling. So you'll see that clustered around specific targets. We've also got hydrogeochemistry in there. We have public reports. So again, for those of you unfamiliar with exploration, private companies that work in this region submit annual reports to the government every year of the activities that they do. And over time, these become public. So you will be able to access these to see what historical work has been done. And recently, the department has OCR'd all of these public reports for you. So you can now not just get them in PDF, but you can get CSV and JSON versions as well. And that is really amazing. I think probably the only department or the only geological survey across the world that's done that to that extent. And we also have ASTA and Landsat data, which is kind of this remote sensing, so it can tell you what types of mineral species you're looking at in the surface and near surface. So as you can see, lots of different data sets, but these are some key ones to help you get started. So the next few slides are going to talk a little bit around, as I said before, not sure who's in the room. I'm hoping we have a good selection of geologists, data scientists, students, and people from all different disciplines. But I always kind of like to use this comparison about how geologists and data scientists think, because it does kind of help us work together a bit more. One of the things geologists like to do is lump everything together in models. So the question that a geologist is asking about this challenge is, can you find a new economic mineral target? For a data scientist, that might not be a very helpful question, because they're not providing context. We're not saying specifically what to predict or how much to predict or anything like that. So working with geologists and data scientists together, we can help frame questions in a useful way to help get across this. I also wanted to provide some context on scale for those of you that are unfamiliar, and we're talking about find an economic mineral deposit. What does that really mean? I've just showed you a whole area of South Australia. So where do you actually start to look? And we know that we've got signals at kind of a national scale, and then a really, really small micron scale. This is an image of gold in here. So what does that mean for you in terms of how you take on that challenge? You can see what we do at the moment is we typically start at a really regional scale with some of these larger data sets. So that data set I mentioned before that the survey have recently released, which is that airborne geophysical survey. And that's a good place to start. But then we want to zoom in to a local scale, to a smaller scale, to say, okay, how can we look at this area in more detail? And that's when you might start looking at drilling or other data sets that are on a local scale. And then we might even go down even further to take more high resolution geophysics on a smaller area to help us zone in step by step at areas of interest. And at the moment we do that in kind of cyclical process, and at the end you can see this typically comes down to geologists drilling a hole to test that target. But we think that analytics, and it already is, but we think it can really help to cut down the time and the cost of getting to this stage of drilling, particularly with some of the new techniques that we're seeing people use in the data science space. You can quickly process a lot of these layers of data to do kind of better targeting at all of these stages. So we think those are some of the things that you'll be able to do really well in this challenge. Another thing that's worth noting about geoscience, which is a little bit different to other kind of, I guess, domains that we might be applying data science and machine learning to. Usually when we're looking at things in mineralization, they're not normal, so they're not the main trend. The background geology is actually not what we're interested in. It's the real anomalies. So if you think about it, the needle in the haystack, we don't really care that much about the haystack, we just care about the needle and the signature of the needle. And often the signal that we're looking for is not particularly obvious, it's not the main trend. So here in this example, we're saying these are the things we might care about rather than this trend. So that's a little joke on there. A lot of people give geologists a bit of a hard time about this, but in reality, we are looking for very kind of small signatures sometimes in that overall data set. So that's something to be really mindful of when you're approaching this in an analytical way, is that how do you pick out those anomalies that aren't necessarily the main trends? And on that, we're looking at, particularly in that kind of machine learning application, if you do have a background in data science and you do have, you are looking at applying this and kind of training some models, what does that mean? What does that look like? In a lot of exploration geology, training data points are really sparse. So if we look here, if we look at the Gawler craton, for example, and you're going to say, okay, how many mines are there, major mines are there in the Gawler craton, which I can use to train my model? And there might only be a handful, say like 5. So for most of us that come from a machine learning perspective, we just kind of come at this to say, well, this is actually not enough training points for my model. I wouldn't be able to build a model with that few training points. So what can I do instead to get around that problem? What we find that most people do is build data sets of kind of deposits locations from not just within that project domain, but from a broader area. So one of the things that we've done when we've run one of these challenges previously is actually to collect deposit locations across all of Australia and package this up into quite a simple, accessible data set. So you can actually build models on this data to train, but it doesn't lock you into a particular approach. So we've got that on our GitHub. You can also access that by our main challenge page as well. But if you are looking to kind of start down that machine learning road, this Australia-wide data set is a really useful place to start, so you can start getting more training points for your data set. So kind of as I've kind of been alluding throughout this talk, we really think that the most successful teams will be multidisciplinary. So if you are a geoscientist, if you're a mathematician, or if you're a data scientist, we really encourage you to work together. Likewise, students, we encourage you to, if you're studying geoscience, to go and find a computer scientist and team up across departments. It's a great way to learn more, and particularly if you are coming into the industry, or if you are studying or finishing your studies, this is a great way to gain the skills that are really relevant to the industry and where work is going. If we look to a lot of geoscientists, we see a huge transition that geoscientists are making by training up and upskilling in data science at the moment. So it's a really great way to get yourself ready for the industry as well. But we do have some team forming things on our website. And if you are interested in finding new teammates, please let me know. If you are a student and you're at a university, please reach out as well, because we can usually touch base with your professors and find people within the university to help you connect with other departments and find other teammates. So down to the specifics of the challenge. So the challenge was launched on the 2nd of March, and we've kept it open for 5 months, so closing on the July 31st. So now we don't expect you to work solidly for 5 months, but we have kept this open for this time, so you can select the time that suits you to work on it. So if you are a student, and we've kind of tried to keep it open long enough so it can fit into your semester time, so you could potentially do part of it as a project or anything like that. So you've got until the 31st of July and then we'll take around 6 weeks to assess all the submissions and select the finalists and announce the winners. So let me just have a look. So what prizes do we have? We have a total of 250,000 Australian dollars of prize money to give out, which is really significant. That's an amazing incentive for people to get involved. I think that's really cool as well for encouraging people to get involved. So the top 2 prizes are for the best overall approaches. And then the rest of the prizes are kind of broken up into specific areas to help if you wanted to focus on something, if you didn't want to necessarily tackle the whole data set, if you wanted to go in a specific area, these prizes are designed for you. Firstly, we've got the student prize, so the top student team for $20,000. So that is awesome incentive if you're a student. And by the way, we ran one of these competitions last year and we had a student prize and we only had 4 student teams submit. So if you are a student team, I would really encourage you to submit because there's a really high chance of you winning, and this is a lot of money. And we can definitely support you on that. So that to be a student team, you just need to be at master's or undergraduate level, and you can have, you don't have to be just linked to one university. You could have people from different universities in your team as well. So that's the student prize. The data prep prize is one of my favorite prizes, and encouraging people to get involved with that. So the data prep prize is actually only running for the first 2 months of the competition. There's 4 of them up for grabs at $5,000 each. And this is for you to share some of the work you're doing getting the data ready. So we know with this type of challenge, there's a lot of data. A lot of the data needs to have a little bit of work. You have to do a little bit of data wrangling to get it ready to put into your models. And we also know from last time that a lot of people did that, and all the teams did it themselves individually. So for the data prep prize, we're encouraging you to share your data prep, whether that's code, whether it's the new data set that you've created that's useful. Share that on our forum with other people participating, and the data or the code or the data that gets used by the most people or has the most kind of positive comments will be eligible for these 4 prizes. So that's a great way to win a bit of cash up front and also help support everyone else participating in the challenge. So the other 4 prizes that we have on the right here are more about specific ways of looking at the data. So with this challenge, obviously we're trying to generate targets across the Gawler craton, but there's a number of ways that we can do that, and then there's a number of areas that we're interested in as well. So breaking new ground is actually for people that are looking at underexplored areas. So as you saw some of the maps before, we've got quite a lot of activity around Olympic Dam, around Prominent Hill, around those major areas where we've got known deposits. But in the north and west of the Gawler, there's not so much exploration activity, but we think it's highly prospective. So the Breaking New Ground prize is for people that want to focus on those underexplored areas and find interesting targets there. The Future Data prize is around actually giving indications to people as to what additional data they could collect to make their models better. You'll notice once you start looking at the data that there is quite a diversity in terms of data density, particularly in drilling. So this prize is for people that in their submission talk about what additional data that you would need to make better predictions in the future for all different types of mineralization. The Rock Licker prize is for the best use of geochemistry and mineralogy in your predictions and generating your targets. And the Undercover prize is for the best approach to find deposits undercover. Again, for those of you that aren't familiar with exploration, in the Gawler, we do have quite a significant amount of cover. So what we mean by that is that the basement rocks, or the rocks that we consider prospective, might be underneath a couple of 100 meters of newer material that we determine cover. So that means we can't directly sample them at the surface, and we need to have other techniques such as geophysics to help us identify what might be under the ground before we drill test it. So that prize is about looking at the best method for identifying things under cover. So quite a lot there. All of those are really outlined in a lot more detail on the website, so you can go and have a look there. So judging and submissions. What are we actually asking you to submit, and how will you be assessed? So for the submissions, we're asking you to submit 3 things. A digital model, and when I say digital model, it's basically your target files. So it can be in a lot of different formats. We know that people are going to want to approach this challenge in a lot of different ways. So it could be a point file of your targets. It could be a shape file with the regions of interest. It could be a gridded prospectivity map. Anything that you want to submit, which is a file that contains your targets or areas of interest, essentially. A little bit of a video pitch, so a 5-minute video of your team, and this can be super casual. We're not judging anything around quality of video. We just think that videos are the best way to get across your message in a really clear, succinct way. So your video pitch is the opportunity to talk about your approach and convince the judges that your approach is good. And a technical report is really there to go into any more detail that you think will be the judges will look for in assessing your submission. So really what we're assessing is the validity of your technical approach. So obviously with geology, it's not easy for us to go and test all your targets to see whose targets are actually the best. So the technical report is your ability to showcase to the judges that your method is technically robust and valid, and that you've used a lot of high quality skills to get to your targets that you've generated. So that will take about 1 month. And the judging panel is a combination of geoscientists and data scientists and mathematicians across academia and industry. So all the types of people that have the relevant skill sets to assess your submissions. And on that, worth noting, and you'll see this on the website, the purpose of this challenge is to provide targets to the exploration community in South Australia. So the digital models that you submit will be available to the public. Your technical report will also be available to the public. However, we are allowing people to submit a private report. If you are a company that has some IP around this, or you have some sensitivity about not wanting to share some of your methodology in the public space, you can certainly submit that in your private report, which will just be used by the judging panel to assess your submission and the targets. And that's also, you definitely have that option if you'd like to take that road as well. So I rushed through that super quickly. Here is the link to the competition and the challenge page. Registrations are open now, and you can get in touch with me directly via this link and also via the forum. What I might do is I'll open up for some questions, and while you guys are thinking about some questions that you might have, I'll probably just jump on our website as well to talk you through some of that. So yeah, if you have questions, please pop them in the chat box or the Q&A box, and I'll answer those. What I might do as well is just, I will now, all of the department guys, I will enable your video and audio. If you would like to speak, then you can, but don't feel like you have to. So yeah, while you guys are joining, okay. Peter or Laz, is there anything that you think that I missed in that rushed review of the challenge?
No, I think that was pretty comprehensive, Holly. You did well.
Probably talked a bit too quickly. All right. Okay. How do you anticipate that the results from the comp be delivered to the relevant tenement holders. Okay, really good question. Came through on the chat there. A question, I don't know if everyone can see that. So is, how do you anticipate the results from the competition will be delivered to all the relevant tenement holders? So what we're going to do, you'll have that kind of combination of all the target files themselves and the reports. And we'll probably have those, we haven't decided exactly on the exact system, but there'll be a kind of a web-based application essentially, or location where you can access those files and either view them or download them. So the challenge is to generate targets across the whole of the Gawler. So targets will be generated on tenements that people already hold, and they'll also be generated on vacant ground. So there's actually a lot of ground in the Gawler that's available to be pegged. So there's plenty of new areas as well as those that have people that have their current tenure. So it's probably still open for discussion, and I don't know if Peter, you have any comments about if we will send anything directly to tenement holders, but certainly you'll be able to access and download it online.
Yeah, I'd probably say that it'd be likely that we'd just send out a general communication to tenement holders. We would make the results and the data available online and just point them to those in the communication.
And I know we've got a few students on the line as well. So if you guys have any questions, particularly about students participating, please let me know. Whilst we do have the dedicated student prize, I think there's a lot of other benefits for students to participate. It's a really great learning experience with some industry data. You get feedback from industry and academia on your work. And you'll also get to engage with them and be able to showcase and profile the work that you've done. So it's not just about the cash prizes. There's a really great opportunity to learn and to get some real industry experience as well. And if there's anything that we can do to support any of the student teams, please let us know, because we're happy to host some sessions for you at the universities as well. Q&A. Can a member of a team and make a separate individual submission? Yes. So the question was, can you be a member of a team and then make an individual submission as well on another approach? Yes, I don't see any issues with that at all. If you'd like to do that, I don't think there's anything in the terms that would prevent you from doing that at all. So that's fine. So another question: is there any free software available as part of this competition? So no, we don't have any free software available. However, we recommend everyone uses QGIS or QGIS, which is an open source software. And that is a really, really great piece of software that majority of the files available for this project can be used and viewed in there. Did Peter or Lars, did you have any comments on anything on software?
Sorry, just got to find that unmute button every time. Yeah, not particularly. I think the recommendation around QGIS is a very solid one. Most, I think, of the data packages, the only one that would work in QGIS quite happily, the only one I think about is the seismic, but then we've pointed people with the seismic data to some free software that the US Geological Survey makes available that would allow you to access that data. Yeah, I think that's probably the main comments I'd have on that front.
Cool. Yeah, so if you do jump on the challenge page under the data tab, we have a link to any of those services like Peter was discussing around that some software, particularly to process the seismic data or anything else that can support you in kind of using some of those files. But certainly QGIS, and I've just posted the link in the chat there for anyone. It's really easy to use, quite self-explanatory, and it also has a good community of people around it to help you if you have any questions. Another question here: is the spatial scope of the comp limited to the Gawler or expanded to the whole state? Definitely the focus of the competition is the Gawler. I say, Peter, interested in your comments, but I say we're happy if you want to look at a broader region, but we just needed to kind of have a particular kind of limit to the scope because there's so much data. If we were to open that up to the whole state, it's probably just a bit too much. And so the region that we've linked it to is the Gawler for a number of reasons. The Gawler super perspective. We've also got the GCAS survey that's just come out, and that's incredibly high resolution over that region. So, and we know that there's quite a lot of available ground and the potential to explore for new mineral deposit types as well. What I might do is just share, sorry, I'll just get up the competition site as well. Okay, and feel free to keep putting questions in there. So you should now be able to see the website here. So this is the site you go to find any more information. So once you come to this page, you'll be able to see most of the information without registering. This orange button here where it says edit submission. If you haven't registered for the competition, it will say register. When you register, all you're doing is really accepting terms and conditions. There's no obligation at all, but it's just accepting the terms of the competition. And then you'll be able to see the data tab and the forum as well. So just running through this, under the challenge tab, you'll be able to see the full description of the challenge and what we're asking you to do, what things you might be able to find, some reference materials. So for example, here we've got a link to all the potential mineralization types in the Gawler, what kind of data we have, other resources. So I've got a link to QGIS here as well. And then under the data tab, we've got listed all of these top 10 data sets and the links directly to those. So most of these, as I saw before, click on this. It's hosted on SARIG. So this link will take you directly to this catalog on SARIG, where you can access the data in a number of different ways and get some more background information as well. If you have any questions on SARIG, Christy's on the line, so please pop them in the chat box. So yeah, all of the top 10 data sets are on there with all links. We've also got all those additional data sets, which will also be found on SARIG. And some of those, there's a couple that are hosted on the unearthed AWS instance instead, just for ease of access. And then we also have the forum. So I certainly encourage anyone that's looking and taking part in the challenge, head to the forum. There's a lot of information on here. And it's where I was seeing people share a lot of information as well. We've got an FAQs page which goes to a lot of common questions that you can see some people that have already started to engage for that data prep prize. So have a look on there because you'll find a lot of the things that people are putting on there super useful for you to get started, particularly if you're looking at applying it from kind of a data science technique. One of our community members, Russell, has just done quite a large piece of work on kind of extracting some key data points from a couple of files on here. So definitely encourage you to jump on there and take a look at that. And in the rules tab, you'll be able to see all the different prize descriptions in detail and all the judging criteria in detail and submission guidelines in detail. So all the information you need should be on there. So a question comes through, I'll just stop showing there. There was prior mention of a new MT file being prepared that may be ready during the competition. And our other data files like company reports, how will we be informed? So I can answer on the company report. So how people will be informed is via email. So I sent an email out yesterday or the day before that provided the update to the new OCR'd reports. So do check your emails because it will come through on there. To anyone that's registered for the challenge will get that email. Let me know if you're not receiving emails. We do typically send them out once a week. And they may go to your spam, but do let me know if you're not getting those, because we'll send out a weekly update. Peter or Christy or Laz, does anyone want to comment on the MT file?
Yeah, I guess the comment I'd make about that is that there's currently some processing going on of some MT data that's been collected, I think more specifically across the region. And there's, look, I'm no expert on it, but possibly a bit more detailed. If that processing is completed and the results are satisfactory, that data will be made available. I can't say when, and I think that I'm not 100% sure about what the processes would be for whether I'd imagine we'd probably deliver that through SARIG as we are with the rest of the MT data, and we'd just let you know, Holly, that that was available and you could put out a communication to everybody.
Cool. And actually, Peter and Christy, is there anything you want to note, to mention about that work that we've just released that you've done on OCRing all the reports?
I can just do an update on the so the exploration, if anything comes out new, so that I suppose that bucket, if anyone jumps on that bucket is automatically updated if a new if new report's been updated or a new one comes on. So it is, I mean, for a new one, I would be just looking at the numbering sequence. If another one pops on, well, then that's new. We also have a section on our website, which exploration data releases, which I know is updated when something, new exploration data releases are done. I can send you that link, Holly, so people, they can come on and have a look. So that's where it is updated. And with the MT, if a new package comes out, I'll just pop it onto the MT GeoNetwork catalogue record, and then obviously let you guys know when that's done, if that's helpful.
Yeah, that's great. And on the with the public reports, the OCR work you've done, is it worth explaining kind of what so we've got the different file types now and how people can access things differently?
Yeah, okay. So what we did was we ran the basic Amazon TextTrack tool over the almost 8,000 PDFs that are in that bucket. And the TextTrack tool produces two outputs. One is just a straight text file, which is just pretty much a dump of how the TextTrack process has interpreted what it sees in the file. So there's a lot of, a fair bit of cleaning that needs to be done with all of these, because if there's maps or tables and things like that, handwritten annotation in the reports, all of those things, they don't necessarily get translated particularly well by the TextTrack process. But in theory, well, no, in practicality, it should be a lot more searchable and a lot more machine readable than perhaps some of the PDFs that are up there. So that's the output in both text and JSON. The difference with the JSON is that the JSON also includes the position on the page of all of the text. So theoretically, you can recreate the document on a page-by-page basis, and in theory, you should be able to recreate tables and that sort of thing out of the document using that position information on the page to sort of, so yeah, we think, we haven't done a lot of playing around with it, but we think that that should be a couple of pretty useful formats, but there's certainly going to be, a bit of cleaning that needs to be done with all of that. And there's about 100 files that out of the almost 8,000 that just we could not get the TextTrack process to run successfully over those files, nor really determine what the issue was. So we've got about 99% of them, but there's about 1% that haven't been done. And as far as Christie's comment around new files that get added in there, they won't, at the moment we're not set up to be able to automatically OCR those. So new files that go in would go in as PDFs only at this stage, and we might we might look at whether we can sort of do some manual OCRing of those at a couple of points during the competition, just so to add to that information. But it's not going to be a huge number of new files in comparison to the total number that's already in there.
Cool, thanks, Peter. And actually, is it worth noting some of the work you guys are doing? I know it will take a while for that to come through on the new, on some of the drilling.
Yeah, okay, that is. And possibly some of the people listening at the moment are already involved in this, but we are about to engage a significant pool of people to work on capturing some of the legacy data that we don't currently have in our database, mostly out of the company reporting processes. So they will be working quite extensively on adding to the drill hole data particularly, and we anticipate incorporating that into our database as it goes, and we'll probably make, I think, maybe two new extractions of the data into that SARIG data package over the life of the competition, just to make that extra data available to you. The key thing to note here is that we won't be changing the format or the structure of what's in that data package. We'll just be adding new data in. So the rationale around that is that hopefully that means you can still build algorithms now with confidence that the data that's available is pretty much going to be the same in terms of its structure and content. And then as we add new data, that gives you the ability to just rerun the algorithms and see what impact that data has on your results. That's what we're thinking in that kind of space. So yeah.
Awesome. And that data is kind of spread across the area. There's no specific locations that's.
No, we're just trying to capture as much of the outstanding data as we can in the time that we've got available with the resources and budget that we have to do that work. So.
Cool. Thanks very much, Peter. Well, I'll give people a few more minutes to pop any more questions in the Q&A box or in the chat before we close out. Is there anything else we should know? Trying to think if there's something I've missed, but I think in terms of follow-up, just jump on the website there. I'll just pop that quickly in the chat as well, so if you want to click on that now, you can go straight to it. And for any follow-up questions, just pop them in the forum. We usually get back to you within 24 hours with any responses there. Definitely encourage everyone to read the stuff that is on the forum. There's lots of answers to most of your questions there already under FAQs, and definitely get involved in the data prep prize because that closes in just over a month. I've only got one submission so far, so I don't know if that will end up doing if we only get one, but there's 4 available, so lots of opportunity to get involved and get some cash up front. So yeah, I'll give you another 30 seconds to pop any questions if anyone has any last questions. Otherwise, thanks to Peter and Christy and Laz and the team for jumping on and getting involved, and thanks to everyone who's dialed in and listened. Apologies for those that wanted to attend in person. We were looking forward to meeting you all, but I hope this is a good alternative where you've still been able to get all the information that you need. And as I said, if anyone needs any additional support, particularly if you've got a university team and you want an individual session, or if there's anything else we can do to support you, please just shoot me an email. No problem with that. And Peter or Christy, any closing out comments from you?
No, we're I guess just very excited to be participating in the competition. Very keen to see what the outputs and results of it will be, and very keen to support people as much as we can in having a fun and successful competition.
Cool. Thank you. Oh, just one last question that's come through here. Is the deadline for the data prep the 30th of April? Yes. So the data prep prize, we've just got open for the first 2 months because we're trying to encourage people to share that so that other people can use it. So yes, the deadline is the 30th of April. However, the part of the assessment of that prize is how well your submission has been used by other people, so how useful it is. So it's like how many other people have clicked it and engaged with it. So the earlier you get it in there, the more likely chance you have of winning. So for the person that's already submitted it, go and have a look at what they've put in. We've got an example in there as well as the types of things. And I'll probably do a couple more posts around typical issues that we see with these data sets to kind of give you some ideas of what you might want to do as well. So I'll pop that in there. All right, well, if there's no other questions coming through, I'll close out the session. We have recorded this, so I will load it up to our YouTube channel and send out the link to everyone if you want to read through it again. And yeah, please get in touch with us via the forum or via email. So thanks very much, everyone, and hopefully talk to you again soon. Right, bye. See ya.